Hey there, I hope you're doing well. My name is Arya and today we're going to look at some more Reddit stories. If you enjoy Reddit stories, consider liking, subscribing, and maybe hitting that notification bell too. Let's get started with today's first story. Much love, everyone. Today's first story comes from my parents and kids disowned me because I got pregnant and cheated. Please reserve judgment regarding my situation until you've heard my entire story. I'm just trying to figure out if there's a way to save my 19-year marriage or if my relationship with my husband is beyond repair. I'm a 38-year-old woman. You can call me Francine and my husband, let's call him Ree is 44. We got married when I was 19, just a month after giving birth to our daughter, whom we'll call Libby. Libby is now 19 years old. Almost a year later, our son, whom we'll call Craig, was born. Both kids now attend the same college, which is 5 hours away from us, despite marrying young and with limited financial resources, while raising a child. Ree and I managed quite well from the beginning. We had a wonderful life. Ree has a good job now and has always been an excellent provider, husband, and father. Even during those early days. I also worked 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We have plenty of money, own our home, and have a decent savings. Our family was incredibly stable and my husband, kids, and I formed an unbreakable team. Until I fell under the influence of a very manipulative person, it all began innocently enough. We have a beloved dog who is an integral part of our family, as I mentioned earlier. I work on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, so I'm home on Tuesdays and Thursdays. On those days, I take our dog to the park. On the days I work, Ray comes home during his lunch break to walk our dog, and we both walk her on the weekends. About 3 months ago, while at the park, I met a man there. Let's call him Leonard, and he's 37 years old. His dog and ours started playing together. Leonard mentioned that he had seen me there on multiple occasions with my dog, but I couldn't recall ever seeing him before. Coincidentally, we began encountering each other at the park every time I visited. With each interaction we engaged in more conversations and became casual friends. Nothing inappropriate occurred. We simply chatted as fellow dog lovers. One evening during dinner, I mentioned my conversations with a man named Leonard from the dog park to my husband. I asked if he had ever noticed Leonard there. My husband replied that he hadn't, and I informed him that Leonard's dog had become good friends with ours. We shared a laugh about it and the subject was dropped. Time passed and then things between Leonard and me started to change. About 2 months ago, while chatting at the dog park, Leonard mentioned that he lived in a nearby luxury apartment complex. This complex was roughly a quarter of a mile from the dog park and about half a mile from our home. I commented on how nice the apartments looked from the outside and asked him about their interior. I mentioned that a friend of mine was considering renting there, which was true at the time. Leonard then suggested that I walk over to his apartment with my dog to take a quick look and some photos for my friend. I knew I should have politely declined, but I ended up agreeing once I entered his apartment. I immediately realized that I had crossed a line of appropriateness. Leonard showed me around, and I stayed for about 10 minutes, thanked him, and mentioned that I needed to head home. He then inquired if I'd be back at the park the following Tuesday. I replied affirmatively and departed. This marked the beginning of my infidelity, as I failed to inform Ree about my visit to Leonard's apartment when I returned home that night. Instead, I became even more attentive to my husband, prepared a wonderful dinner, and cuddled with him on the couch until we retired to our bedroom. It was a delightful evening. The subsequent Tuesday, I once again met Leonard at the park and we conversed for nearly 2 hours. Toward the end of our discussion, I informed him that we needed to distance ourselves from our friendship as we had crossed the boundaries of appropriateness. He acknowledged this but expressed that it felt so right and that we shared an incredible chemistry at this point. I could have retracted and put an end to things, but, regrettably, I concurred with him. Things escalated rapidly from there, and the following Tuesday, I spent the afternoon with Leonard at his apartment, becoming physically intimate with him. Surprisingly, that evening I experienced minimal guilt or remorse for my actions. Instead, I felt a heightened desire and passion for my husband, and we shared a wonderful night together reflecting on this. Now I am utterly disgusted with myself, but I must be honest, Leonard and I continued to rendezvous at his place every Tuesday and Thursday until my day this past Friday, which was almost 2 months from the day our physical relationship began. I should have realized that something was amiss with my husband 2 weeks ago, when I noticed a sudden change in his behavior, but I was too snared in the affair to notice or perhaps to care. That's when my husband's behavior shifted. He began responding with brief answers and avoided engaging in conversation with me. He also turned down my requests for intimacy on multiple occasions and no longer initiated it himself. During this period he started working late, often not returning home until after 8 p.m. He claimed that he and his colleagues were engrossed in a major presentation and that they were all having takeout meals at the office. While such significant projects did occur, occasionally it was unusual for them to persist for 2 consecutive weeks. When I questioned him about it, he simply stated that it was a highly classified project set. To conclude, on Friday, I accepted his explanation and felt relieved, anticipating the return of my affectionate husband. He assured me that he would make up for lost time and promised an emotionally charged weekend ahead. However, the emotions I encountered on Friday were not what I had expected upon arriving home. I discovered a large manila envelope taped to the door, bearing my name upon opening it inside. I was utterly shocked. The envelope contained numerous pages of messages exchanged between Leonard and me on the fake Facebook accounts we had created to communicate during our affair. If you're excited about this story, let us know. If you enjoyed the video, press A. If not, press B. Your feedback really inspires me to gather more uplifting and meaningful stories. As I perused these messages, I burst into tears and struggled to catch my breath. It was so overwhelming that I even contemplated calling 911. I tossed the envelope to the floor and began pacing around the house, uncertain about who had left it at my door. Was it Leonard, or perhaps my husband, or could it have been someone else? My questions were answered when I entered the bedroom. There, right in the middle of the bed, sat a white gift box adorned with a large red bow and a card tag bearing my name in the to line and my husband's name in the from line. Anxious and trembling, I carefully removed the bow and opened the box, only to discover divorce papers inside. At that moment, I realized my world had collapsed and I simply lay on the bed sobbing uncontrollably into a pillow. After about an hour of pondering my next steps and rehearsing what I would say to my husband, I called him, but he didn't answer. I persisted with my calls, but he remained unresponsive, resorting to texting. I messaged him but received no reply. Anxious, I paced around the house wondering how to handle the situation. I then attempted to contact my daughter and son through both calls and texts, but they too were not answering, which struck me as unusual. Shortly thereafter, I received a text from my husband informing me that he was aware of everything, as were our children, his extended family, and as of 15 minutes ago, my own parents. He explained that he had moved out and signed a lease for an apartment, adding that I would soon be hearing from his attorney. He'd used the message by saying, "Enjoy your new life with Leonard." Upon reading his message, I wept for hours, pausing only to answer a call from my mother. However, instead of providing comfort, she launched into a tirade without allowing me to utter a word, ultimately hanging up on me. I repeatedly tried calling her back, but she refused to pick up. I reached out to my dad and he answered when I asked to speak with my mom. He informed me that she had nothing more to say to me at that moment. My father proceeded to express his deep disappointment and shame in me, admitting that he never imagined his own daughter could commit such an act. His words shattered me and I couldn't hold back my tears as I repeatedly apologized. He remained silent as I continued to speak. Once I had finished pouring out my emotions, he advised me to compose myself and strive for better. I responded with a simple "Okay, Daddy. I will," and we concluded our conversation at this juncture. I felt too humiliated to confide in my friends or another family member, so I retreated to my bedroom and cried alone. I decided it was necessary to call Leonard both to inform him that our relationship had come to an end and to seek a comforting presence during this difficult time. When I dialed his number, he immediately questioned why I was using my phone instead of our fake Facebook accounts. I didn't mince words and told him that my husband had discovered our affair and was pursuing a divorce. Leonard's response was a simple, "Oh no." He knows how my answer was that I didn't know how he found out. Leonard inquired further, asking if my husband had stumbled upon my Facebook account. I speculated that he must have. Leonard pressed on, asking whether my husband knew who he was. I confirmed that he did, as my husband had mentioned Leonard by name in the text message I received. Leonard's reaction was a string of expletives, and he began shouting the word loudly, causing his dog to start barking. After his outburst, he composed himself and stated, "Okay, I'm sorry this happened, but you were careless. Leighton, sever all ties, delete our accounts and phone numbers. Hopefully you can salvage your marriage, please don't contact me again." I found myself both surprised and disgusted by his lack of courage, and I simply responded with an "okay," that was it. There were no apologies for wrecking my marriage, no inquiries about how he could make amends. No expressions of gratitude, just self-preservation talk from a shallow individual. How could I have been so foolish as to cheat on Ray with anyone, let alone someone as repulsive as Leonard? I'm writing this at 3:00 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, which should give you an idea of my state of mind. I've taken the entire week off to focus on trying to get my husband and kids to talk to me, so I can offer my apologies and work on healing and moving forward. Does anyone have any suggestions on what to do next? My spirit is crushed and I feel utterly alone. I've lost everything except my dog as a consequence of my actions. Have any of you who have strayed experienced being cut off so swiftly by your spouses? I mean, Ray is gone and wants nothing to do with me. I understand how hurt he is, but to completely remove me from his life and initiate divorce proceedings over this single foolish mistake seems incredibly harsh. Please help. Update: I'm returning here because I need an outlet to cope with the intense pain I'm currently experiencing. I just had a conversation with my kids while they were on their way back to town after 3 days of them ignoring my calls and texts. I had hoped they were calling to talk and allow me to apologize. Unfortunately, Ely, what I got was a barrage of insults, disrespect, and hurtful names. These were words I had never heard either of my kids used before. Libby in particular was exceptionally harsh, and it seemed to influence her brother's behavior. I did apologize, emphasizing that I had manipulated Leonard and I felt somewhat victimized by that guy. I reminded them of the years of being a great mother and a good wife to their father. Up until now, however, my daughter insisted that I was once great but had now become terrible. The worst, she concluded the call by informing me that she and her brother would be spending the weekend with their dad, and I shouldn't expect to see them at all. This deeply saddened me, especially because Sunday is Mother's Day and my kids and husband used to make that day special for me. This year, I'll be alone with my dog, who at least still loves me unconditionally. I understand that much of what Libby and Craig are feeling is the initial anger one experiences after being betrayed. Still, I can't help but feel awful about their reaction. I'm not seeking pity here, just some words of encouragement. I'm grateful to those who have sent messages of support. It has genuinely helped me so far. I'll provide updates when I can update too. I wanted to provide an update as I've received many requests to do so. I've been attending individual counseling. I see for 2 weeks now, and it's been quite helpful. My counselor is a wonderful woman who has given me the courage to keep moving forward. She explained that at this point I've done everything I can to mend the relationships with my family. The best course of action now is to step back and wait. If they come back, it means we always had and will have love. If they don't, it suggests they never really loved me. Additionally, she recommended transcendental meditation, which I started last week. It has brought me a greater sense of peace and inner calm. I feel more in control of my mind than ever before, so that's where things stand in my world right now. I'll provide further updates if needed. In my next update, I hope to report that my husband and kids have welcomed me back and we're once again a happy family update. 3. It's been a while, but I'm here with an update. Get ready, as I have a lot to share, including some good and bad news. A couple of weeks after my last update, I discovered I was pregnant. Yes, at the age of 38, I became pregnant after trying for more than 15 years to have a third child. This news was both shocking and overwhelming. I was filled with joy at the prospect of the baby being raised, but I also felt terrified at the thought that it might be Leonard's child. I went into a complete panic mode. My first instinct was to tell Ree, but I realized that if I did and the baby wasn't his, I would lose him forever. Moreover, if the baby turned out to be Leonard's, I didn't want to keep it if I ended the pregnancy and Ree ever found out. He would never forgive me because he's against such procedures, so here's what I did. I contacted a DNA clinic and inquired if they could perform a prenatal DNA test without needing the father's saliva. The lab said it was possible, but only with specific other body samples which I didn't have. The only potential sample was hair follicles. I found a few on my husband's brush, but there weren't nearly enough for a complete sample, so I hit a dead end there. My contingency plan was to reach out to Leonard and ask him to participate in and cover the cost of a prenatal DNA test. However, he had blocked me and deleted his Facebook account, so I decided to visit his workplace and catch him when he arrived. When he saw me, he initially tried to ignore me and then, with a disgusted tone, asked what I was doing there. I insisted that I had something important to discuss and we needed to have a conversation. He expressed his disinterest in talking to me any further and apologized for being a factor in my marriage falling apart internally. I thought, yeah, right. Why didn't you consider that? Before relentlessly pursuing me without hesitation, I blurted out that I was pregnant and he was the father. He responded by saying, "Oh no, you're not going to trap me with a baby. I'm familiar with this tactic." I told him to pay close attention. I said that if he didn't want me to walk into his office and immediately report his inappropriate behavior to the HR department, he needed to comply with my request. I then instructed him to schedule and cover the cost of a paternity test, providing him with the clinic's contact information. I made it clear that if he didn't take these steps within 48 hours, I would proceed with reporting the situation to his HR department on that evening. Leonard unblocked my phone and sent me a text stating that he had scheduled an appointment for the following Tuesday at 1000, and knowing I had the day off. We both arrived at the clinic office, but there was no conversation between us. They called Leonard in first, where they collected his saliva sample, and then it was my turn and they drew a blood sample. It took a week to receive the results, but the wait was worth it because Leonard was not the father overwhelmed with joy. I fell to my knees and offered thanks to the Lord for blessing my husband and me with another precious child we had longed for. I was eager to share the news with Ree, but I still had no means to contact him as he had blocked me and I remained unaware of his whereabouts. At this point my children were still avoiding me and barely communicating with me. I texted my daughter and son explaining that I had something very important to discuss and asked if they could arrange a three-way call. My daughter repeatedly inquired about the nature of the call, to which I simply replied that I would share the information during the call. We set up the call, and I delivered the good news. However, instead of sharing in the joy of welcoming a new sibling, both of them responded with tness and unkindness towards me. They immediately jumped to the conclusion that the baby belonged to Leonard. I reassured them saying that I was certain. It was your father's child. My son then inquired how I could be so sure, and I explained that I had calculated it based on the estimated conception date at that time. I didn't have the actual conception date and didn't want to mention the DNA test with Leonard, so I opted to clarify it in this manner. My daughter then accused me of intentionally trapping her father by getting pregnant. I asked her how that could be possible, as all of this occurred before your father even knew about my involvement with Leonard. She responded reiterating her point, accusing me of deliberately getting pregnant by her dad in case he discovered my affair. She believed the baby was my way of ensnaring him. I refuted her claim, emphasizing that it was absurd, and reminded her that her father and I had been trying for years to conceive. After lengthy discussions, they eventually agreed to talk to their father and ask him to call me. I anxiously awaited Ray's call that night, but it never came. The following morning passed without any communication as well. Then a little after 1:00 p.m. on the subsequent day, I received a call from Ray's attorney. She left me a voicemail, and I promptly returned her call. She explained that she was representing her client and had been informed about my pregnancy, along with my claim that the baby belonged to her client. Upon hearing this, I couldn't hold back my emotions and started crying uncontrollably. I begged her to allow me to speak directly with my husband. The attorney was empathetic and understanding, but remained firm. Once I had composed myself, the attorney informed me that my husband was requesting a paternity test for confirmation. I readily agreed and offered to arrange it as soon as possible, even volunteering to cover the cost from my savings. The attorney requested that I set up the appointment and specified that her client would provide his saliva sample at a time when I wouldn't be present. I consented, but I spent the entire night in tears, grappling with the fact that Ree believed I might deceive him about something as significant as this. I couldn't fathom why he wouldn't accompany me to the appointment. The paternity test was conducted, and earlier this morning the results came in conclusively confirming that Ray is the father. Although I had already known this, receiving the official results brought immense relief to my mind. I'm currently working on leaving the terrible nightmare that Leonard pulled me into in the past, and I'm eager to rebuild my relationship and trust with my family. I'm very grateful for all the support and encouragement you've given me to help me through this challenging time. Final update: I received numerous requests for an update, so I'm here to share how things have been progressing for my family and me. While we're still a work in progress, each day gets us closer to rebuilding the family we used to be before Leonard selfishly caused harm and my errors contributed to it. Firstly, Ree and I went through with the divorce, despite my pleading and begging, and even with the confirmation that I was carrying his child. He proceeded with the divorce. I had high hopes after the DNA test confirmed he was the father, eagerly anticipating speaking with him and being held in his arms, while he assured me everything would be all right. However, that moment never came. Instead, we had a meeting at his attorney's office, which was recorded during this meeting. He informed me of his decision to proceed with the divorce and expressed his desire for us to transition into a good co-parenting relationship. I couldn't hold back my tears and asked for a moment to compose myself. When I returned, we discussed custody arrangements, with him wanting to split custody time with me. I told him that I preferred him to have full custody, which once again brought me to tears. Ultimately, our divorce was finalized and we divided assets and custody of our young child evenly. I received 1 year of alimony and ongoing child support. Ree also agreed to cover 50% of the taxes, insurance and utilities for our family home for 2 years to ensure a safe and secure environment for the baby. In late January, our precious little one was born, and he's indeed a miraculous child. Not only did he grace our lives after 15 years of trying, but he's also been instrumental in reuniting our family. My relationship with my daughter, Libby, and my son, Craig, has returned to its normal, and they adore their little brother. Libby even joined me in the delivery room during the birth since his birth. Both my kids have been coming home from college every weekend, taking turns holding the baby. My husband has also been a constant presence in my house since the birth. He comes straight from work and stays with me until I put the baby down for the night. Just yesterday he brought takeout dinner for the two of us, and while we didn't eat together, I see this as a positive development. He and I are on very friendly terms, and we haven't brought up the affair or the divorce. I haven't pressured him or discussed the possibility of us reconciling. I'm still attending individual counseling, and my therapist advised me to give him space and avoid discussing our relationship, which I've been doing, and it seems to be working each passing day. I feel like I'm gradually regaining the love and connection with my husband. I've applied a similar approach with Libby and Craig. If I do manage to win Ray back as a husband or even as a life partner, I'm committed to never jeopardizing our relationship. He, along with my kids, means the world to me, and I'll do everything in my power to show them how much I value and cherish them. I don't have any more updates at the moment, while I wish things could return to the way they used to be. I understand it's not possible, so I'm focusing on appreciating what I currently have, which, in my opinion, is quite wonderful. This might be my final post unless Ree and I decide to officially reconcile. If that happens, I'll return to share the good news with everyone. Once again, a big thank you to all who supported me throughout this journey. Alright. That was a fun story. Now, let's move on to another exciting one. Stay tuned and let's dive in. Hello, I just need to share what's been bothering me lately and could use an outside perspective. I'll try to sum it up for you in the end. In February, my husband, 33 male, and I, 31 female, had been married for a year when he had to go on a crucial business trip to the UK for 3 weeks. Unfortunately, things got extended and he and his team had to stay an extra 2 weeks to finalize the deal. This marked the first time we'd been apart since we got together 6 years ago, so I was dealing with a whirlwind of emotions. I tend to become overly clingy and emotional when things don't go as planned, and this is a trait I've always had. I'll admit that it can be challenging to live with me at times. Additionally, I grapple with some mental health issues that contribute to my insecurities and paranoia, especially when it comes to the fear that my husband might be cheating. The fact that he extended his trip by 2 weeks only fueled my concerns. I even went as far as calling his office to confirm that his entire team was indeed still in the UK. During this period of separation, I struck up a friendship with our neighbor, and one night after watching a movie together, things took a turn. I recognized that I allowed things to get out of control, but I was overwhelmed with worry about my husband's situation. That night our neighbor became physically affectionate, but my anxiety caused me to stop things from progressing further. However, the following day, I revisited the situation because I didn't want to regret not knowing where things might lead. They did lead to a full-blown affair over the next few encounters, whether at my place or his. I continued to be anxious about my husband's situation, but I didn't feel an overwhelming sense of guilt. This has led me to question if there's something wrong with me now. Things took a messy turn when my husband returned home in early March without any prior warning. He thought he'd surprise me, as if that was a good idea. The house was in complete disarray, empty beer cans, snack wrappers, scattered all over the bed resembling a tornado aftermath, and dirty laundry strewn around. It was quite a sight. I suppose it's somewhat understandable, given that I wasn't prepared for my husband's unexpected return. Otherwise, I would have tidied up, especially the bed, which was a dead giveaway when he inquired. I simply explained that I had friends over because I was feeling lonely. We played games, had some drinks, and it was nothing out of the ordinary. I'm not sure if he bought my explanation. But after seeing the state of things, he decided to do some cleaning. I tried to dissuade him because I knew there might be incriminating evidence lying around, and indeed there was. He discovered a bag in the trash containing a used rubber, its wrapper, and a toothbrush. My heart sank and my hands trembled. It felt unreal. Somehow, I managed to maintain my composure and informed my husband that there were 2 couples among the friends I had invited over, implying that things had gotten intimate. My husband gazed at me for an extended moment, and in that instance I could tell he didn't believe me, so I came clean about the affair, about my involvement with our neighbor. My husband's expression shifted to one of disappointment, hurt, anger, and fear all at once. I'm not sure what came over me, but the next thing I knew I was on my knees, pleading for forgiveness and another chance. However, deep down, I'm not even certain if I deserve one. I realized I made a massive mistake. I tried to explain that it was a one-time thing, driven by my vulnerability during his absence, but he didn't believe it. He suggested that we might have been involved throughout the time he was away. My husband outlined 3 conditions for us to move forward. 1. It was a singular occurrence. 2. It wasn't premeditated, just a foolish impulsive blunder, perhaps under the influence of alcohol. 3. There are absolutely no romantic feelings between us. He made it clear that if all these conditions aren't met, he'd leave. He also asked to review my phone conversations with the other guy from the past few months to ensure there were no plans or signs of romance. However, I had deleted those conversations without any backups, so all he has left is to trust me. Frankly, if he had seen those messages, it might have been the end of our marriage anyway. My instinct tells me he might be better off without me. I'm contemplating initiating a divorce. I've heard he's already consulted a lawyer, and I'd prefer to be the one to file, rather than him serving me. So what are your thoughts? I know I wronged him, but I believe there must be a way to navigate through this couple's face more challenging situations every day and still manage to sustain their relationships. I'm open to your advice and eager to hear your perspectives. Update. Hello, everyone. I wanted to provide an update on the situation I previously discussed. I'm grateful for all your advice and support during this tough time. Having this community to turn to has been a great help. After doing some deep thinking and having more conversations, my husband and I decided to sit down and talk once more. I realized it was time to be completely honest about everything, which meant sharing the truth about the affair that occurred during his business trip. It was a challenging conversation, but I believed it was necessary for both of us to fully grasp what had transpired. I confessed my mistakes, acknowledged my wrongdoings, and admitted to not considering his feelings. It was an intense and emotional moment, but I felt that complete transparency was crucial. In response, my husband experienced a range of emotions. He felt hurt, angry, and confused while trying to process what I was revealing. He requested some time to contemplate, and I agreed, giving him the space to process it all. During this period, he reached a decision and shared his thoughts with me. He expressed that he felt hurt not only by the affair itself, but also by the subsequent lies and deception. Trust had been shattered, and he recognized that rebuilding it would be a lengthy and challenging process. He asked me to leave the house, explaining that he needed time to figure out our future. However, I declined because, despite my actions, I'm still his wife and have legal rights to the house. I couldn't simply leave without a plan in place. Currently, tensions are high and emotions remain raw. In our situation, he has attempted various methods to persuade me to leave, including becoming very angry, having violent outbursts, resorting to guilt trips, and generally being manipulative. However, I've reached a point where I have nothing to lose. So I've straightforwardly informed him that I won't be moving out. I acknowledge that he needs time to process everything and make a decision about our future, but he'll have to do it with me in the house. Don't misunderstand, understand me. I deeply regret the pain I've caused, and I'm fully committed to taking responsibility for my mistakes. I don't believe that this should be the end of our story. I have much more to offer, definitely not to the neighbor. Just to clarify, I understand that there's a long road ahead, but I'm willing to put in the effort required to rebuild trust if that's what's necessary to salvage our marriage. I genuinely believe that every couple faces their own unique challenges, and it's possible to overcome difficult situations. If both parties are willing to make the effort, I'm still hopeful for an opportunity to mend our relationship, but I'm also preparing for the possibility that my husband might decide that parting ways is the best option for us. Once again, I want to express my gratitude for your support, advice, and understanding. Having a space to share and receive guidance during such a challenging period means a lot. I'll continue to provide updates as things develop. Please keep us in your thoughts and send positive vibes our way. Update. Hello, I'm back with another update. Recently, my husband served me with divorce papers, and it was a devastating blow. I had held on to a slim hope, but it seems he's determined to move forward with the divorce despite still living under the same roof. There's a noticeable tension, and he's been avoiding me as if I have a contagious illness. Our families have been informed, and understandably they haven't been supportive of my actions and decisions. Both my parents and in-laws have strongly criticized me, and currently we're not on speaking terms. I'm navigating this difficult situation on my own, and it's been incredibly challenging. The thought of divorce is frightening, not only due to the potential societal shame, but also because of the impact it would have on my life. I acknowledge my mistakes, but I'm also afraid of being alone and having to support myself again. This fear may have contributed to my strong reaction when my husband confronted me about leaving the house. I do care about him and I'm beginning to understand that I must take responsibility for my actions. The idea of us not being together anymore is painful, but it might be a consequence I have to face. I've had the desire to start a family and in the past few days I've been feeling unwell. So there's a glimmer of hope on that front. I realize that, given the circumstances, it may not be a possibility now, but I also believe my husband would not abandon his child, so perhaps having a baby could be a solution. I'm aware that eventually people in our small town may find out about our situation and that's something I'll have to confront. I'm heading out shortly to have a pregnancy test done at the lab. I've tried home kits, but they've all come back negative. I'm anxious and feeling ill just thinking about what might happen if I'm not actually pregnant. Is this truly the end for us, Edit? I'm not pregnant. I'm going to turn this one over to you. What do you make of this situation? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and as always, a huge thank you from the bottom of my heart for getting involved in today's stories. Your love, support, and time mean the world to me. So, thank you so much for being part of this. I really appreciate your time. I'll see you in the next one. Take care and much love.